Hey folks, it's Shannon McFarland, head of Cisco DevNet and the Cisco Open Source Program Office, here to get into some groovy stuff. We are going to kick off some demos for multiple different series here on YouTube to talk about utilizing MCP clients. I've got a link for a previous post and a previous YouTube video of that in the description. And we're going to talk about Model Context Protocol, both from the client side, a variety of different clients, things like Cursor, Claude Desktop, VS Code with GitHub Copilot, stuff like that. And then utilizing that for some of our DevNet SecOps workflows against MCP servers. And again, if this, MCP client, Model Context Protocol, servers, that stuff is foreign to you, again, you can take a look at the links I've got in the description to learn a little bit more before you get into this. But today we are going to look at Cursor, which is one of my favorite daily tools from a development point of view these days. And then we're going to look at unifying Cursor from a development tool to leverage GitHub through an MCP server and also leverage NetBox with an inventory. And we're going to interact with both of those basically at the same time. So let's get started. So one of the things that obviously to get started in here, you would need to go to cursor.com and download the AI code editor. Again, there's lots and lots of content out there for you to go and learn quite a bit about Cursor. It's a great tool. I've been doing quite a bit of stuff with it, but we will move to different tools throughout this video series. So once you've got that up and running on your local machine and so forth, then you're going to want to go and take a look at the Model Context Protocol server list. Now, there's a multitude of directories out there that have list of clients and servers out there. I'll post some links in the description. But one of the ones that I tend to just go to most often is the one in the GitHub repo for the MCP project. And you can see here lots and lots of stuff in all these different reference servers. This is by no means an exhaustive list. As I mentioned, I'll show some additional ones in the description. But the one that we're going to go after here today is this GitHub MCP server. So this is right here. This one here is showing a deprecation notice of the development of this, and now it is moved over to this particular project, which is the actual GitHub MCP server. So make sure you pay attention to that. Even though the first one is listed in the MCP GitHub repo, GitHub actually has an official MCP server that's out there, and you can follow along with these instructions to get this stuff implemented inside of your environment. So let's take a look at how I've got this running inside of my Cursor environment. So in my Cursor client, if you go up here to your settings, you'll see an MCP servers list, and you'll see that I've already got one and it's already connected in the green. So let's take a little bit of a look at what this setup looks like. So if I open the JSON file, and again, as you learn Cursor, there's two ways of interacting with these MCP servers. One is at a global level, which is utilizing your mcp.json file at a global level, which applies to all of your workspaces. And then there is one that we'll be looking at for NetBox that is project specific. So within, for example, your own local GitHub repo, you'd create a .cursor directory and then an MCP JSON file in there. And when you run MCP, it'll actually discover that there's another one there. We'll actually show that here in just a minute. But for GitHub, you can see here that I'm actually got a script wrapper here. If you go to the actual MCP documentation, it'll show you a different command structure to get that done, and that's totally fine. It's just it's how you prefer to wrap up your particular environment variables. But if we take a look at this, copy this path here to my script, and I'm actually not going to show you this one. I'm going to show you a clean one. And cat that file. So you can see that I'm actually wrapping the actual npx MCP server command with my GitHub personal token. So it's just the way I'm setting my environment variable. There are many other ways of getting that done. Okay. And that's it. Once you have that, that running and your proper GitHub access token in there, you'll actually see that it will discover all of the tools, and everything's good to go, right? So we're set up, and we'll look at some of these other MCP servers in future videos, and we'll also see the NetBox one that I was talking about. Okay, so what I've got here in this environment is my local repo, which is let me see where my repo is. There we go. So you can see that my GitHub repo, there's a bunch of stuff in there, but we're actually going to test out our GitHub server integration with our Cursor MCP client integration. Okay, and so let's go into Cursor again, and to save you from let's just break out of this context here, to save you from watching me fumble with typing on this video, I'm just going to paste a pretty basic prompt in here. And so I'm going to say, hey Cursor, I want you to create a new repo named MCP demo, make a README file with blah, create a branch, and then create 4 new files with a little bit of complexity, not really, but just say, hey, file in where n is 1 through 4, create a commit message, and then push the file to and create a PR on that. Now, so by default, MCP, especially within Cursor, will check with you before each start. So let's go ahead and get this cranked off here. And you'll actually see it's going to do a little bit of work, but it's asking me to run tool or do an accept for that. And so you can come in here and click, and you can see what it's going to do. It's going to create this repo with this name based upon what I've got, right? And so I can click accept. And this is what you want to do, right? You want to watch it do these things one at a time and really kind of trust what's taking place here. And again, we can click accept. And then over a period of time, if you're really trustworthy of your tool, especially if you've built it and you vetted it, then you can go and change the way this setup is working by altering your agent setup to be auto run. So I'm going to do that just to speed up the demo a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and it's going to run completely on its own. And so you'll see here that it's going to create the branch, it's going to push some files, it's going to create the PR, and then it's going to give me a summary of it, right? So pretty cool. So I can actually go, over here into this, do a refresh. We'll see that we've got a brand new repo here, and we've got our README file, and things look pretty good, with the exception of what else did we tell it to do? Well, we told it to create these new files. Well, I'm not seeing that out of the normal repo. So let's see what else might be missing. So let's look in the actual commit here, add 4 new files. The files are in there. Okay, so it actually didn't go ahead and merge these changes on our behalf. So sometimes, you got to do, we can come back in here and go ahead and do a formal review. So sometimes it does a great job of following your instructions perfectly and allowing it to basically do most things, right? And so if we come back up here into our repo, we'll now see that we've got these files, and this is file 1, and it built a README with the stuff that we wanted. So it was most of the way there. I'm about 95% of the time that I'm doing something very specific in GitHub, it's doing what it's supposed to do. Sometimes it has a hiccup, like we all do, right? So now let's go in here and say, okay, we're good here, but we want to delete the branch. So this is where you want to really take a look at what tools you're getting when you are using someone else's MCP server. And so you can see here that this thing is trying to sort things out. And it says, hey, this thing's been merged. But if I want to, so the branch can now safely be deleted, but deleting this requires me to blah, blah, blah. And you're going to go through this over and over again to find out that it actually cannot delete the branch. Why is that? Because inside of our tool list, we can see that we can create and search and get and all kinds of stuff we cannot delete. Okay, so if you are pulling your hair out, which I don't have any, so I'm good with that. The reality of it is that it may do everything it can to try, but not actually admit the fact that it actually can't get this done. And this is, this changes based upon which models you're using and which even MCP integration on the client side you're using. So just pay attention to what you're getting in the tools so that you don't ask questions and get frustrated and blame the LLM or something like that when it really has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the MCP server tool or capabilities of those particular integrations. Okay, and so we're good. We now know that our quick and dirty MCP server for GitHub is operational. Okay, so now let's move to the next step and let's go and take a look at leveraging NetBox. So for those of you that have not been leveraging a good inventory tool for basically any kind of IT asset, NetBox is a great tool that's out there. I'm not here to sell NetBox. I don't work for NetBox. I don't get paid by NetBox, but it's a pretty popular tool, right? And so one of the things that I'm going to do in this integration is I'm going to run NetBox Docker. The open source version, the community edition of it, is going to run local to my machine. So I will post the link of this in the description. And you'll actually just follow these same steps the way I did, and you will end up with a Docker implementation. It's a nice, tidy all-in-one. It creates the Redis and Postgres and all that other stuff for you. And it publishes basically an API endpoint that you can get to on localhost port 8000. It takes just a couple of minutes to get running, and it works very well. And so once you've got that running, you now have a NetBox interface that you can log into. Okay, so that's cool. It will come with absolutely nothing. So two other little tidbits to get this running in your environment is if you want to load tons and tons and tons of devices from lots of different manufacturers, then you can go and grab this device type library import repo from the NetBox community. Again, just clone the repo, follow the instructions, and just note that you may want to select specific vendors, not all of it. I mean, I've got all of them running in mine in a Docker container, but it does take a while to get those loaded. And there's a few ways that you can get it loaded through an API call is what I use. But there's a variety of ways to get basically these entries loaded in there. So now we've got all these device types from inside of that environment. Another thing that I tend to do just for a quick, a pretty quick test once I've got this up and running, is that I have a local file here that's a script that I've built here. And again, don't worry about the NetBox token. That's already deleted by the posting of this video, and it's on my local Docker environment anyhow. But people freak out in the comments about tokens being shared. But I built this Python file that basically goes through here and does a bunch of stuff and creates some sites and names and device roles, and it even creates some devices for me on Ubuntu and some Cisco devices and that sort of thing. And so you can see that we've got that running in here. We can see the devices that I have, and I just run a script to get that up and running and populated. Okay, so now let's go back to the MCP part, right? So if we go to the NetBox Labs MCP Server, they've got one already, for us to use. And so you just go ahead and do a git clone of that, do your dependency check, export your token in your URL. In my case, it's localhost 8000 is what the API is listening on. And then you follow their instructions to populate your MCP server. This could be Claude Desktop. It could be MCP Inspector. In my case, it's Cursor. And so you're ready to go once you've got that operational. So let's take a look at the cursor settings that I have here. Well, you see that I've got a NetBox and it's up and running, so it's green. That's good. It took me a while to get there, I'll tell you. So I'll tell you a little bit about troubleshooting some of these here in just a minute. But what I've got in this particular case is I have what is known as a project managed MCP server config. So if you look in my path here, where I've actually got the GitHub repo cloned and that I'm working out of, if you take a look at my, it's a hidden directory cursor, MCP JSON file, you'll see my information is here. This MCP server is local to this workspace, and when I fire up cursor, it will detect it in that particular path, okay? And so you can see that these two are globals and this one's project managed. And so I don't care how you do it. I don't have a best practice recommendation for it, but if I am doing just one-off tool testing for MCP, I tend to create one within my GitHub repo space. That way I can just blow it away with the rest of the repo or whatever I need to do. But I caution you that if you are really pushing stuff out of your GitHub repo and you are doing these MCP JSON files in that workflow, make sure you're not pushing that to a public repo and that you're exporting tokens and that sort of thing, right? Horrendous idea. So in this particular case, if this was like my open API key or something like that, and I push that inside my GitHub environment and the rest of the world can see that by just drilling down in a file that I either didn't sanitize or didn't exclude, that would be terrible. So that's just a little quick safety rant that you see on there. So back to taking a look at our tool capabilities, right? In this particular case, we're only doing, NetBox is giving us these three particular entries as far as tools are concerned. So let's take a look at this. And let's say, give me a list of devices using I think I called it dr_Cisco_router role. Okay, so it's going to go out there and it's going to leverage this MCP environment. It's going to run the server that they've got running using this URL and token. And sometimes you'll get this on some queries, right? It's like it doesn't understand, it's not parsing correctly the context of your question into a way that the API can translate correctly from a response, right? And so it's saying, hey, I'm actually looking for filters, but it actually works on it and it eventually gets it sorted out, right? So it can see here, it's like, hey, my object type is devices, my filter is this, and it'll actually keep working on it and then get it through so that the API actually accepts it. And so you can see here, I've done this test 2 times today, and each time it has displayed something different. It will give me a clean list. It will give me a list, and then in parentheses, it will give me the device type. And then sometimes it will give me a device type. So sometimes, it's just not always a consistent output. So that's just something where you want to really, again, get into kind of tuning your prompt so that you know that the output is in a format that you want it, right? And so I can get additional information here. So give me a list of the types of those devices. And so it'll go through and it'll, give me a little bit more information. All of them happen to be the same thing. Give me a list of sites and regions. So cool. We're interacting with this stuff. Now, we're not going to create or manipulate objects within this because the default NetBox MCP server is about getting things, okay? So when you are doing things like in the file system, we'll give that a test here in just a minute, where you're going to do a write or you're going to do an edit or a delete or a move. These are things you want to be very careful about in scoping them in such a way that you really are giving them extremely tight boundaries in the things that they can do and where they can go, okay? And so that's something we'll actually test here in just a second, okay? So cool. So our use case now is we've got GitHub integration within Cursor with an MCP server representing GitHub as a tool. We've got our NetBox implementation running in Docker, and we've got an MCP server representing that NetBox implementation, and we can interact with the two of those. Okay, so now let's kind of combine these workflows a little bit, like you would in a basic kind of DevNet SecOps kind of environment. So what we want to do here, and again, I'm going to grab a little prompt that I used here before to just save you the pain again of watching me type this. But I'm going to say, export a list of all device types to a file name NB export and use a format that can be used to build an Ansible playbook. Now, I know that part of the time this freaks out. And that's because it doesn't know exactly where to put the file. Sometimes it knows that my local workspace that I'm operating in, it will create a file there. Sometimes it doesn't, and it knows that it doesn't have authority to write a file really anywhere outside of this file system MCP server that I've got running. So if we take a look at that real quick, we can see that I've got the file system server. You can find that in the directory I pointed to before. And I have got it scoped to this specific path. Well, guess what? I'm not in that path. I'm in an examples GitHub NetBox MCP Server path, not this path. Okay, so we're going to take a look and see if this thing freaks out on us, and it probably will. Okay, let's give it a try. So it's going to go out and export a list of all the device types that are inside of our NetBox environment. And it's going to, I've asked it specifically, it needs to know what Ansible is, and it needs to know a format that Ansible could eventually play with when we want to templatize it and then leverage it to do something Ansible-like, right? So it's going through this export, and we're going to see what it's going to do here. And so we can see that we've got all these device types that are getting played out. So it's moving along. It's done what it should do within the NetBox environment. And now it's trying to do basically this file write operation. Okay, so this is one of those times where it went ahead and did pretty much what I asked, right? It said a file named NB export has been created containing the blah, 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 blah. Pretty cool. Right before this recording, I did this exact same test, and it told me that it can only create a file in this path. It would not write it anywhere other than that path. So it actually went and took a look and said, you know, hey, I know I'm in this working directory, but I see this other tool call called file system, and I know that there's some boundaries there, right? And so I've turned file system on and off, and it certainly would not write there anymore because it did not have a tool call to make a file system tool call right into that path. But it did give me lots and lots of prompts of basically saying, you know, help me sort this thing out. So in this particular case, it did. We can see here in our NB export, it took that entire entry and put that into a YAML file. Okay, so groovy. We've pulled something out of our NetBox environment. Now, something that we may do in a normal flow, you know, is through scripting or something like that. We may come over here and we may say something like, hey, you know, create a new branch called NB export. I'm actually going to put a 1 on there because I actually think it may have another branch that I didn't delete from an earlier demo. And push that file to the MC demo GitHub repo, which we worked on before, with a commit message of this and create a new PR. Okay, so let's fire this off. And so this would be basically merging its understanding of what we were doing with NetBox, what we're doing with a file tool call, and what we're doing with GitHub, right? And bringing all of those particular things together. And it's going to try to sort through the 3 of those tools simultaneously in one prompt, okay? So we'll see what it's going to do here. And by the way, I do need to accept that file. Cool, we're back. So it said that it took the file exports, been pushed to the branch in that repo with a commit message, and we could go and take a look at this, right? So if we click in here, we can see that it created a comment on my behalf. This PR as a YAML file with all the exports for Ansible playbook use. So it just came up with that thing. You know, we're going to merge it. Absolutely, merge all the way. So we're good. In this particular case, we'll monkey around with deleting the branch later on. So let's go and take a look and see what it did here. So it went and created a new branch. We can see here that we had the NB export branch, and it went ahead and wrote the file into our environment, right? And so it did exactly what we asked it to do that time. So the demo overlords have helped me out on this one to make this, you know, kind of a streamlined thing. Know that it does not always do what it's supposed to do, right? So we'll wrap it up there with the good news. Now, I told you that I wanted to give you a couple of troubleshooting things here when these things go sideways. Now, I'll tell you that the syntax is almost always the same, depending on if you're running NPX or you're running something like Python or some other language that you need to call in your particular format. But know that the flow is pretty much the same. You're going to identify the name of your MCP server. You're going to have a command that may go to an environment. We'll talk about that probably in the next demo, where virtual environments can get a little icky inside of a cursor in some of these configs. Then you're going to have a variety of args, which may be paths and is a Python call? Is it a UV call? Is it an NPX call? Whatever it is, to the actual binary or to your file. And then there's a bunch of different environmental settings that you're going to have, but it's pretty much the same flow for each one of those. But the syntax and order of them has to be perfect or you're going to get some goofy stuff. And so one thing that I found within Cursor that will help me in here is that they've got down here in this output section, they actually have in the drop-down box, they actually have a Cursor MCP debugger. So this thing will give you all kinds of stuff like, hey, it successfully made a call to our NetBox environment. We know that it actually went to the GitHub call and it did a tool call. So it's working through all of these things simultaneously in these environments. You can even see some of the API call where it's actually making the device type call on the Git from the HTTP side. But there's going to be times where you'll get a connection refused or you'll get some errors that you can actually copy into AI and say, explain this to me. What exactly is going on here? And so I've actually done that. I've had some issues where I swear to you, my paths work great. My tokens are good. I can curl to it, but for whatever reason, it just won't work on the MCP server side. And so I've actually went to this output, copied this stuff into my chat, and actually asked it to sort some stuff out. And one of them was as easy as I had an S missing off my examples directory path, right? And so it just like, duh, Shannon. But it immediately nailed like, dude, this is not the same. So I hope this was helpful for you. This is the first of several of these that we're going to go through, and we're going to build on these. We're in GitHub and NetBox. We're going to look at Argo CD with building a continuous deployment system so that when we commit files or artifacts into our GitHub repo, that Argo CD picks that up and starts doing deployment functions for us against other entities. So we're going to look at an Argo CD MCP server environment. We've got a bunch of stuff coming from building all of this content and then programmatically using it against Cisco APIs. So we're going to look at a bunch of Cisco products probably over the series of several of these videos that are going to let us interact with things like Nexus Dashboard or Cisco ICE or Meraki Dashboard. We'll take a look at several items here and do a few demos of that stuff so that you can really start to build a muscle of practical experience around utilizing your favorite client. We'll do many clients here in these demos against a specific server that either you build or someone else built. And then we're going to test that against our Cisco DevOps environment. Okay. So hopefully this was useful to you. Leave some comments on some stuff that you would like to see in the future. And I'm going to have to say, like and subscribe, or my social media manager will track me down and beat me. So until next time, thanks a lot. Have a good day.